he live crossed over the system by that Lord, who showed compassion for our highest good. Still are his powers relaxed and uncontrolled, like woodland doe all tender grown and weak. Now hearing these words that Khuddhaka grew agitated, and expanding insight, in due course won arahantship. Thera. Usabha. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Usabha. Reborn in this Buddha age in a wealthy family, in the kingdom of Kosala, he found faith in the Lord when the latter accepted the gift of the Jeta Grove. Finishing his novice initiate, he lived in the forest at the foot of the mountain. Now at the time of the rains, the clouds had emptied themselves in the crests of the hills and trees. Bushes and creepers became filled with dense foliage. Then the Thera, going forth one day from his cave, saw the loveliness of the woods and the mountains, and considered seriously. These trees and creepers are unconscious, yet by the season's fulfilment they have won growth. Why should not I who have attained a suitable season win growth by good qualities? And he uttered this verse, which became his declaration of aññā, for he forthwith strove and won arahantship. The trees on high by towering cloud refreshed. With the new rain break forth in verdant growth. To Usabha who for detachment longs, and has the forest sense of things, did come. From this responsive spring abundant good. Thera. Yenta. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Yenta. He was reborn in this Buddha age in the kingdom of Magadha at the village of Yenta, as the son of the Raja of a district. While still young, his mind, impelled by maturity of conditions, inclined to leaving the world, and he turned the matter over and wondered what he should do. So doubting he heard the Lord preach. From that day he became devoted to the religious life, and entered the monk's order. Happily working and with swift insight, he realized arahantship. Then reflecting on his attainment and how he had been perplexed, he joyously uttered this verse. Hard is the life of the world, and hard, in truth, to bear house life. Deep is the path. Hard too is wealth to win. Thus difficult the choice of one or other how to live. It is my duty to bear unceasingly in mind, and see in everything impermanence. Thera. Vakagata. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Vakagata. Reborn in this Buddha age at Rajagaha as the son of a wealthy Brahmin, and because there were 4 Theras named Vaka, he was called Vakagata. Come to years of discretion, an expert in Brahmin learning, he, as a seeker after emancipation, found no essence in those studies, and became a wandering recluse. As such he met and questioned the Lord. Satisfied with the answers, he entered the monk's order, and in due course acquired 6-fold abhina. Reflecting with joy upon his career, he uttered this saying. The 3-fold wisdom is mine, and I excel in jhana ecstasy, adept in calm of balanced mind. Salvation have I won, and all the Buddha ordinance is done. Thera. Vanavaka. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Vanavaka. Reborn in this Buddha age as the son of a wealthy Brahmin at Rajagaha and named Vaka, he found faith when King Bimbisara conferred with the Lord. And entering the monk's order he attained arahantship. As arahant he lived in the woods devoted to detachment. Hence he came to be called Woodland Vaka. Now it happened that the Thera, in order to do a kindness to his family, went to Rajagaha, and lived there a little space, telling them of his mode of life. They begged him, saying, Sir, do us the kindness of living in the near vihara, and we will wait upon you. The Thera showed them in this verse both his love of the mountains and the life of detachment. Crags where clear waters lie, a rocky world, haunted by black-faced apes and timid deer, where beneath bright flowers run the silver streams. Those are the highlands of my heart's delight. This verse became the Thera's declaration of aññā. Thera. Adhimutta. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Adhimutta. Reborn in this Buddha age in a Brahmin family at Savatthi and named Adhimutta. He became discontented at finding no essence in the Brahmin wisdom. And while he was seeking to escape during his last span of life, he saw the majesty of the Buddha at the presentation of the Jeta Grove. Entering the monk's order, he in due course won arahantship. Upon that he addressed those bhikkhus living with him who were very fat, in this verse. If you to this gross body give such heed, greedy its pleasures to enjoy, the while life's energies do ebb away, oh from where shall come perfection in the holy life? Thera. Mahanama. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Mahanama. Reborn in this Buddha age at Savatthi in a Brahmin family, and named Mahanama, he heard the Exalted One teaching the path, and gaining faith, entered the monk's order. Taking an exercise, he lived on the hill called Khuddhaka. Unable to prevent the rising up of evil thoughts and desires, he exclaimed, "Of what worth is life to me with this corrupted mind?" And disgusted with himself he climbed a steep crag of the mountain, and made as if he would throw himself down, saying, "I will kill him," speaking to himself as to another and uttering this verse. Lo you! How to a wretched end are come! By this steep crag, this famous hunter's hill. Its many crests begirt by saltree woods. And all its narrow valleys with tangled greenery clothed. In the act of upbraiding himself thus, the Thera evoked insight and won arahantship. And this verse became his declaration of aññā. Thera. Paparia. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Paparia. Reborn in this Buddha age in a Brahmin family at Rajagaha, he became proficient in the three Vedas. And being of the Parapara clan, he was called the Paraparian, and taught mantras. He saw the wisdom and majesty of the Lord at the Rajagaha conference, and entered the monk's order, in due course winning arahantship. Reflecting on his career, he broke forth in joy with this saying. Avoiding dealings with contact's sixfold field. Guarding the gates of sense, Lord of self. The general root of misery vomiting. From every poison stain am I immune. This verse became his declaration of aññā. Thera. Yasa. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Yasa. Reborn in this time of our Exalted One as the son of a very wealthy counselor at Benares. He was exceedingly delicately nurtured, and had 3 mansions for the different seasons, all of which is told in the Khuddhaka. Impelled by antecedent conditions, he saw one night the sin in his sleeping attendants and, greatly distressed, put on his gold slippers and left both house and town, gods opening the doors for him. So he went towards Isapatana, exclaiming, "Alas! What distress! Alas! What danger!" Now at that hour the Exalted One, who was staying at Isapatana in order to do him kindness, was walking to and fro out of doors, and said, "Come, Yasa, here is there neither distress nor danger." Yasa filled with joy put off his slippers, and sat down beside the Exalted One. The Lord talked to him by a graduated discourse, and when he had finished teaching the truths, Yasa achieved Sotapanna. And while the Exalted One taught the truths to his father who had come to seek him, Yasa realized arahantship. Then the Exalted One held out his right arm to Yasa, saying, "Come, Bhikkhu." And at his merely saying the words, Yasa's hair was shorn 2 fingers' length, and he was equipped with the 8 necessaries. Reflecting on his career, he rejoiced over those words calling him to his present state, "Come, Bhikkhu." And uttered this saying. With perfumed skin and delicately clad, and head ablaze with gems, nathless my way. I found and made the threefold wisdom my own. And now the Buddha ordinance is done. Thera. Kimbala. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Kimbala. Reborn in this Buddha age at Kapalavathu in the family of a Sakyan Raja, and named Kimbala, he inherited immense wealth. The Lord saw the maturity of his insight while staying at Anupiya, and in order to arouse him, conjured up a beautiful woman in her prime, and showed her to him passing to old age. Then Kimbala, greatly shaken, uttered this verse. As reminded by some power, age over her falls. Her shape is as another, yet the same. Now this myself, who never have left myself, seems other than the self I recollect. He thus, considering the fact of impermanence, was yet more strongly agitated, and going to the Lord heard the path, believed, entered the monk's order, and in due course won arahantship. Upon that he emphasized how he had formerly looked on things as permanent by repeating the verse, by that confessing aññā. Thera. Vajiputta. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Vajiputta. Reborn in this Buddha age as the son of a Likavi Raja at Vasali, he became known as the Vajan's son, because his father was one of the Vajans. While yet a youth and engaged in training elephants, he, inclined by fulfilling cause to seek release, went to the vihara at the hour when the Lord was to preach, and having heard, entered the monk's order, and in due course acquired sixfold abhina. At a later time, shortly after the Lord had passed away, Vajiputta formed an agreement with the chief Theras to preserve the Dhamma intact, and travelled with them from place to place. One day he saw the Venerable Ananda, who was still a student only, surrounded by a large congregation, teaching them the path. And to call forth endeavour in him to reach the higher paths, he uttered this verse. Come you and plunge in leafy grove of trees. Have nibbana to sink in your heart. Study and be easy not, you of Gautama clan. What did this fingal fangle mean to you? Hearing this and speech of others, dispelling poisonous desires, Ananda grew agitated, and most of the night walked to and fro meditating. Then, with insight worked up, he entered his living, and in the act of lying down on his couch, he won arahantship. Thera. Isadatta. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Isadatta. Reborn in this Buddha age in the kingdom of Avanti at Vagama, as the son of a caravan guide, he became the unseen friend of Siddha, a house father at Machakasad. The latter wrote to him on the excellence of the Buddha, and sent him a copy of the system. This so moved him that he sought initiation into monkhood under the Thera Kakana the Great. In due course he acquired sixfold abhina. Upon that he had a mind to visit the Buddha, and taking leave of the Thera, came in course of time to the middle country, and had an interview with the Lord. The latter asked him the question, How goes it with you, Bhikkhu? Are you prospering? And he replied, Exalted One, from the time when I was admitted into your rule, all sorrow and pain left me, all sense of peril was calmed. And he declared aññā in making that declaration, uttering this verse. The factors of my life well understood. Stand yet a little while with severed root. Sorrow is killed. That quest I have won, and won. Is purity from fourfold venom's stain.